All right, Ric Bucher joins us from Bleacher Report and also on Fox Sports 1. Rick, we're watching the Nets get thoroughly destroyed by the Toronto Raptors. And obviously the Raptors are, they're kind of like, it's weird. No one talks about them being defending champions, even though they are. Like, nobody treats them with any sort of respect. Some rightfully so, some wrongfully so. But one of the things that's been pointed out to me is I get how good Portland's been, but Portland's been good against the Nets, who are without 4 starters. They've been good against the Sixers, who didn't have Simmons, and Embiid didn't play much of the game. They've been good against a bunch of beaten-up teams. Let's start with the Blazers. How good are they actually, and are they a threat to the Lakers?
Well, I would flip that around as I'm trying to figure out how good are the Lakers at this point, and what is going to be what are the prevailing factors going to be for success in these playoffs? Because generally defense counts for a lot. And what I think we're seeing with Toronto against Brooklyn is that if you can play defense and you can score a little bit, it's going to be a much different game. You're going to win by a lot. What we saw with Denver and Utah is there's still some issues there defensively for teams that we consider to be fairly good defensive teams. And yet the shots are available. So this is what I don't know. If it comes down to being a scoring race between the Lakers and the Blazers, then I think that the Blazers can scare the Lakers, may even upset them. Can the Lakers get back to playing the defense that we saw them play during the regular season? I mean, they have been flat out awful defensively against everybody in the bubble. Are they going to flip a switch and get back to that? And are they going to get back to their three-point shooting? That to me determines it. The Blazers are going to be what they are. They're not a good defensive team. They can score and they can get it from a lot of different directions, and they have a resilience. It's going to determine everything's going to be determined on who the Lakers are. Are they the regular season team? Then this isn't going to be a contest. If they're not, then the Blazers have a chance.
Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. That's the voice of Ric Bucher. I wonder, the Avery Bradley thing, he has a player option for next year. How welcome could he possibly be in that locker room?
I guess it depends on where things go, but I would imagine if you make this decision, you're not planning on being there next year. I don't see how you can be, to be honest with you. There's all sorts of circumstances, and guys are looking at the playing or not playing in the bubble and saying, hey, to each his own. But considering what's at stake for the Lakers,
correct,
it's hard for me to imagine that he would have made that decision thinking that he was going to come back and play for them next year.
Vlade gets fired with the Sacramento Kings. Is it as simple as how could you not take Luka?
No, I don't think that's the only factor. I mean, from what I know, that there was a real break between Vlade and Peja Stojakovic and other people within the organization. So if you look, there were moves made every summer, and those were Vlade moves, where they would sign the Trevor Arizas and the Dwayne Dedmans and the George Hills, and then before the trade deadline, they would have to switch things up. And what I was told is the summer moves were Vlade's, and then the trade deadline moves or the in-season moves were other people within the organization trying to fix what didn't work from the summer moves. So the big question I have, and I haven't been able to answer yet, is that Vivek Ranadive, along with most every other owner, is looking at the prospect of not making as much money as they normally do. I'm not going to say that they're losing money, but that the profit margin is going to be the same, and that was going to affect making decisions. They just re-upped both Vlade and Luke Walton. So I've been told there was a lot of pressure on Vlade to step down. I can only imagine that they got some money back somehow, some way, in order to make this happen, that they made it uncomfortable enough that Vlade decided to make that decision. Because that was the one reason I thought that they wouldn't necessarily make a change in spite of everything, was just not wanting to pay 2 GMs for the next 3-4 years.
Who do you think the Nets hire?
In terms of their head coach?
Yep.
I've heard a variety of things, and I've heard Ime Udoka is high on their list. The big question for me is, who do you get not to coach this team, but to coach Kyrie and KD? I've heard that KD likes Jacques Vaughn, the incumbent. So that would be a point in his favor. I've also been told they're looking for something else, and that the Sean Marks, Ime Udoka relationship from the San Antonio days could carry the day. So I honestly, I don't know that I'd go with a young guy. I would roll the dice in bringing Jason Kidd back, or go for Ty Lue or Jeff Van Gundy. I'm getting someone to coach KD and Kyrie, and the only kind of coach that I could see doing that is somebody who has some sort of track record and the ability to connect with superstar players.
Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. That's the voice of Ric Bucher. What happened to Lonzo Ball in the bubble?
What happened to the entire Pelicans team? One of the things that I heard, and I've been told, and I haven't had this confirmed, so maybe I shouldn't say. I've put it this way: I've heard that the Pelicans weren't, in spite of the league desperately wanting the Pelicans and Zion Williamson in the postseason and playing in the bubble, that the Pelicans organization itself was not that high on doing it.
Well, they certainly didn't. The players certainly didn't hide their disdain for being there.
Well, not only the players, but I mean from an organizational standpoint, that they didn't see it as whether it was the physical risk to Zion or just the haul that the steep hill they were going to have to climb to get into the playoff picture, that it just wasn't worth it to them. And then, which, as we've now seen, that there was a disconnect between David Griffin and Al Gentry, and that's obviously had a result with Al no longer being there. But I don't think it's Lonzo Ball. I mean, I think that entire team, and this, I guess the heart of it is, like, who's your leader on that team? You've got a mix of guys that are looking to prove themselves, but you don't have anybody who is leading the charge or that everybody is playing around. And I think that is, no matter how much talent there is there, that's going to be an issue. And Lonzo is the kind of personality that is, regardless of what his personal approach was to the bubble, he's a guy who's going to get lost in the sauce when those circumstances exist.
Okay, Ric Bucher joining us. Buch, who do you have in the finals? I don't know if you've done. We have brackets online. Who do you like to get to the finals?
Well, I picked the Clippers in Toronto to get there, and as much because I think that they have proven guys in playoff situations, and they can shoot the three ball, and they've proven that they can be very good defensively. And I think that they have depth and versatility, which, look, there's going to be more injuries that impact the balance of power. Russell Westbrook is not the last, or Ben Simmons, they're not the last guys that are going to go down before we get to the finish line. And I think that those teams are most capable of weathering an injury, even an injury to a main player. So I'm going with that. But as I just said, at the very beginning, like, I want to know, is this going to be an offensive contest? Is defense going to, at some point, rear its head? And with the lack of crowds, are we going to see role players playing bigger roles than they normally would in playoff situations because of the pressure of playing on the road or playing in hostile environments? Is it going to be different here? And I don't have answers to that quite yet, in spite of the fact that we're a game and a half into the postseason.
No, it's still really hard to tell, and how the how the games having one day off in between but no travel, how that affects guys, how being in the bubble for this long affects guys. We don't know. It does make it very, very different. Buke, great stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to ask you. Look, you've got plenty of Lakers sources.
Yeah.
What's your take on and
I think they're still, they know Avery Bradley was a huge piece. Huge piece. You know, between Avery Bradley not playing well and not getting Darren Collison the way they thought they would, like that changed them. And they kind of survived without it, knowing that if there was one thing that was going to come up, it was going to be guard play and lack of shot creators. But at least Avery Bradley was making shots before he shut it down. Before they shut it down. So I think there's that. I also think look, they, being isolated can bring you closer, but at some point there becomes a decline in the actual quality of basketball. I don't think we've gotten there yet because I think a lot of these guys are super into it. But I think for the Lakers, it would be not playing without two of your top 3 point guards not named LeBron James has been really hard for them. And then, the engagement of they finally get to a 1 seed. That said, if they can get Kuzma going the way he played well in a couple of games, it may be able to marginalize that on some level.
Fair enough.
All right, Buke, great stuff, dude.